Welcome back. So we are actually going to talk about CFA Level 1 Economics, and we are going to first talk about microeconomics in the syllabus, and then move towards macroeconomics. And today's agenda is demand supply theory. And so let's get into the slides straight away. And as I told you before, there are the topic weightage for economics is 8 to 12%. So let's take a midpoint average. So this topic is 10% of the overall syllabus in CFA Level 1. So that's a higher weightage. So you need to take this seriously, not just because of CFA Level 1, but moving into Level 2 and Level 3, you still have economics coming up in all three levels. So, and the knowledge that you gather in Level 1 is transformed into Level 2 and then in Level 3. So that way, economics is something which is very important in CFA, not just in CFA, but anything that you analyze, anything that you talk about in finance, the knowledge on economics is something which is very critical. So let's get into the first reading in CFA Level 1 Economics. Demand supply analysis is the first reading, and the first topic area that we are going to talk about is price elasticity of demand. As I told you earlier, there are three types of elasticity of demand. Number one, price elasticity of demand. Number two is income elasticity of demand. And number three is cross elasticity of demand. So in this particular topic, we are actually going to talk about own price elasticity of demand. What is the meaning of own here? When you say own price elasticity of demand, own in the sense we are actually talking about the relationship between price of a product and the demand of the same product. And that's why we say own price elasticity of demand. When you talk about income elasticity of demand, we are going to talk about change in the income and change in demand. When you say cross elasticity of demand, we are going to talk about price of one product and the change in demand of another product. So that's cross elasticity of demand. In this particular case, own price elasticity of demand, we are actually going to talk about the change in the price of one product and the change in the demand of the same identical product. That's the price elasticity of demand. We already know that there is a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. When the price goes up, demand drops. When price comes down, demand goes up. And that is why we say your own price elasticity of demand always is negative. So you don't necessarily have to say your price elasticity of demand when you are expressing them. You don't have to say -2 or -1 simply because it is always negative, because there is negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. So now what is this price elasticity of demand? Look at how we calculate them. We are dividing the percentage change in the quantity demanded by the percentage change in the price. Percentage delta quantity demanded, percentage delta price. That's what we are going to do. So what is price elasticity of demand is going to measure? It's going to measure the sensitivity of demand for a change in price. We know when the price goes up, demand comes down, but what is the degree of change in the demand? When the price increases by 10%, what happens to the decrease in demand? Is the demand going to drop by less than 10% or more than 10%? What are we talking about? So that is what price elasticity of demand is all about. It's going to measure the degree of change in demand for a change in price. So that's what we're going to talk about, elasticity of demand. So let's take a few examples to understand how it works. When you say your price is 10, and then let's say the price is increasing by from 10 to 12. So what happens? Price is increasing from 10 to 12, so there is an increase by 20%. There's a 20% increase in the price, but let's look at demand. So the demand, we know it's going to come down because there's a negative relationship. Let's say your demand is 1,000. Your demand is now 1,000. When the price was 10, your demand was 1,000. Now, because the price increased, the demand dropped to 900. So the demand dropped to 900, price went to by 12. So what's happening here? The price increased by 12%. Is that right? Am I right? The price increased by 20%. Is that right? The price increased by 20%. How do you calculate? 12 minus 10 is 2. Divided by 10 times 100 is 20%. So increase in the price is 20%. So, but what is the decrease in demand? What is the decrease in demand? The demand dropped from 1,000 to 900. So what does that mean? What is the decrease in demand? Decrease in demand is by 100. So that's going to be 10%. So price increases by 20%. The demand decreases by 10%. So which means this particular product is inelastic. It is not elastic. Elastic means it is the elasticity. How sensitive the demand for a change in the price. So in this particular case, I don't think it's very sensitive because when the price is increasing by more than the change in the demand. So when change in the demand is less than the change in the price, then we call that this is not elastic. Do you agree? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Change in the price is 20%. Change in the demand is 10%. So that's why we call it inelastic. Okay, let's talk about elastic now. So let's see how elastics work. Elastic means what happens, let's say your price is 10. Price increases from 10 to 11 and demand decreases from 1,000 to 900. So see what happens here. So let's say 800. Let's say price demand drops to 800. So what happens here? What is the increase in price in terms of percentage? What is the change in the price? Can you guys talk about it? What is the change in the price here? Price increases by 10%. So what happens to the demand? What happens to the demand here? What happens to the demand? Demand decreases by 20%. Demand decreases by 20%. So what does that mean? Change in demand is more than the change in the price. And this is where we are going to say that the demand is elastic because it is changing more for a change in the price. It's becoming more sensitive. So we are going to now summarize what we learned in the price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand is going to measure the degree of change in demand for a change in the price. That is what price elasticity of demand. We know we don't have to focus on the sign here, whether it's positive or negative, because we know all the time the price elasticity of demand is going to be negative due to the negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. So what do we gather now? What do we conclude here? If you say, the first conclusion that I'm going to make, when you say the price, change in price, percentage change in price, let's say, is less than the percentage change in quantity demanded. So then percentage change in quantity demanded. So what do you think is that? Is it elastic or inelastic? The change in the demand is more than the change in the price. That is what we call it elastic. And then moving further down, percentage change in price is actually more than the percentage change in quantity demanded, and this is inelastic. So this is what price elasticity of demand. So let's take some examples where the change in the price is more than the change in the demand. Let's talk about groceries. What do you think about groceries? When the price increases, do you think the demand is going to respond by a significant number? Do you think the demand is going to respond by a significant number? No. What's going to happen? The change in the price is going to be more, but change in the demand is going to be less. Because the demand cannot respond much for an increase in the price, because you will have to anyway buy the groceries for you to eat, isn't it? So that's the important point for you to remember here. But think about certain luxury items where the demand for them is not mandatory and you can postpone the demand. So in such cases, what do you think is going to happen? When the price is going to change even by 5%, you are going to reduce the demand by 10% because you know this is not an essential product. So the conclusion here is that if you are talking about an essential product, the demand is inelastic because consumers cannot change the demand as much as the change in the prices. But when it comes to luxury product or products which are non-essential, the change in the demand can be more than the change in the price, making it elastic. We will talk about more examples as we go, but this is something that you need to understand as a starting point. What is price elasticity of demand? I explained this a bit more, but as we go into the cross elasticity of demand, income elasticity of demand, you will be able to understand much better. Right, now let's get back to the slides again. So how do we calculate them? We calculate them percentage change in the quantity demanded divided by percentage change in the price. So when you say your price elasticity of demand is elastic, or price elasticity of demand is inelastic, when you say elastic, we are actually going to talk about this is more than 1. PED, I'm going to say your PED is greater than 1. It's greater than 1. The figure that you are going to calculate is going to be greater than 1. But on the other hand, when you are talking about inelastic, so here we are going to say elastic means PED is more than 1. But when you say inelastic, PED is going to be less than 1. So this is something that you need to understand. Let's calculate. Let's say the price increases. Price increases by 10%. Let's say quantity demanded decreases by 12%. So can we calculate and talk about this? So what is the formula to calculate price elasticity of demand? Change in the quantity demanded, change in the percentage of quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in the price. So that's going to be, how much that's going to be? It's going to be 12% divided by 10%. So that's going to be 1.2%, 1.2. So what does that mean? Price elasticity of demand is more than 1. So when you say more than 1, is it elastic or inelastic? What do you think about it? Is it elastic or inelastic? Greater than 1. If the price elasticity of demand is more than 1, it is elastic. So what do you think is an example for this? If it is more than 1, it is elastic. If it is less than 1, it is inelastic. So when you say more than 1, it is elastic, meaning the change in the demand is more than the change in the price. That is why we call it elastic. Now, what is the example for this? Essential products, luxury products. Which one would you choose if I ask you? Which one is the correct answer? Is it essential products or luxury products? Which suits better here when the change in the demand is more than the change in the price, which is luxury products, because consumers can change the demand more than the change in the price. So it's going to be elastic, is luxury. There is a different way to calculate this, and focus your attention here now. You can calculate PED by numbers. Like, let's talk about, there is another formula. You say, change in quantity demanded. This is what we say delta. Change in quantity demand, change in the price divided by change in quantity demanded times price divided by quantity demanded. Price divided by quantity demanded times, you're going to say change in quantity demanded divided by change in price. This is another way to calculate. So you've got to remember, this is another way. When you don't know the percentages, this is the best way to do. Like, let's take an example. Let's say the price is 10 and the quantity demanded is 1000. And let's say price is 12, but the quantity demanded is 900. So let's calculate using this approach. So what we are going to do is price and quantity demanded, remember, is the opening price and opening quantity demanded before the change in the price. So before the change in the price, what is your price? What is the change in the price before the change? Price increases from 10 to 12, demand drops from 1000 to 900. So it's basically 10 divided by 1000 times change in QD. What is the change in QD? What happened to the QD? Dropped, minus 100. And what happened to the change in the price? What happened to the change in the price? Change in the price is plus 2. So what's going to be your answer? 10 by 1000 times minus 100 divided by 2. What's going to be your answer? What is your price elasticity of demand? Can you compute it? 10 divided by 1000 times 100 divided by 50. 0.5. Is that right? 0.5. Your answer is minus 0.5, but we ignore this negative sign because we know price elasticity of demand is always going to be negative. So that's what it is. So this is minus 0.5. Is it elastic or inelastic? What do you think? Is this elastic or inelastic? It is inelastic because your answer is less than 1, and that is in line with what we discussed. The change in the price is, what percentage is the change in the price? 10 to 12 is 20%. Change in the demand is 10%, isn't it? Change in the price is 20%, but change in the demand is 10%. So even if you calculate it in the percentage basis, you are actually going to talk about what is the change in the quantity demanded. Change in the quantity demanded is 10%. We're going to say 10% divided by change in the quantity demanded is in the price is 20%, so minus 20%. So again, you're going to get 0.5. So it's the same way of calculating, isn't it? It's just a mathematical arrangement, whether you can use percentages or we can use it without calculating percentages. But end of the day, your answer is going to be minus 0.5 and it is inelastic. So I'm going to go back now. The slides. Let me stop. So we know what it is. Less than 1 is inelastic, more than 1 is elastic. Okay, look at this. This is getting more interesting now. We are actually going to talk about 5 types of price elasticity of demand. They are, if you see these graphs, starting from perfectly inelastic to perfectly elastic. So you got to understand here, what is price elasticity of demand? We are comparing two things. What are the two things that we are comparing? Can you guys talk about? What are the two things that we are talking about in price elasticity of demand? What are the two things we are talking about? The change in the price and change in the demand. How big the change in the price and how big the change in the demand. This is what we are talking about. Look at the first one, perfectly inelastic. The price is changing, but the demand doesn't change at all. Price can go up and come down. It can go up from 10 to 12 or come down from 10 to 8. Nothing happens to demand. This is what we call the demand is perfectly inelastic and the price elasticity of demand is equal to 0. Because if you look at the formula, delta QD percentage divided by delta P, and the delta QD is going to be 0 all the time because your numerator is going to be 0. If your numerator is 0, your answer is always going to be 0. So that's why we say the price elasticity of demand is 0, meaning price changes, demand doesn't change. A great example that I can think of is maybe insulin. You know, if you are diabetic and if you are insulin dependent, and then if you have to take insulin, otherwise you would die, then you have to anyway buy them. If the price goes up, goes down, you still have to buy them because if you choose to live. So that's what it means. So when the price increases, decreases, demand doesn't change at all. So that's elastic, perfectly inelastic. Not at all elastic. Moving down. So look at this. What's happening here? What's happening here? Your price elasticity of demand, we call it inelastic. What does that mean? Price changes by, let's say, 20%, but the demand changes by less than 20%, meaning the change in the demand is less than the change in the price. Is it elastic or inelastic? What do you think about it? Is it inelastic or elastic? Is the demand changing more or less? What do you think about it? Is the demand changing as much as the price, or it's not changing as much as the price? It's not changing as much as the price. So it is inelastic. So this is perfectly inelastic. This is still inelastic because demand is changing a little bit. Here, the demand is not at all changing. Here, the demand is changing a little bit, and that's why we call it inelastic. Moving here, unitary elastic, remember, is a theoretical phenomenon. There is nothing that you could practically explain where you say the change in the price is equal to percentage change in the quantity demanded. If the price increases by 10%, quantity demanded decreases by 10%. So the change in the percentage of the price and change in the percentage of quantity demanded is the same. That is what we call unitary elastic. Price elasticity of demand is equal to 1. So 0, less than 1, equal to 1. What do you think we are going to talk about? Now we're going to talk about more than 1. What is that? Your price elasticity of demand is greater than 1 and it is elastic. What do you mean by elastic? Is basically, you know, the change in the demand is more than the change in the price. Meaning the demand is more responding to the change in the prices. So the price elasticity of demand is actually going to be more than 1. That is what we mean by is greater than 1. And then the last one we're going to talk about is your price elasticity of demand is infinite, which means huge price changes. Price doesn't change, but the demand still changes. So these are the 5 categories. Let's summarize once again. The first one is perfectly inelastic. Demand doesn't change. Demand doesn't change for a price change. Number 2, inelastic, less than 1. Change in the price is bigger than the change in the demand. Unitary elastic, change in the price is equal to change in the demand. Then elastic one, change in demand is more than the change in price is elastic. And then the last one, price doesn't change but the demand changes. So this is like something, you might want to understand this little bit more. And before that, you need to understand the examples for elastic demand. What do you think is the example for elastic demand? Essentials, luxuries. Which one would you choose? Which one would you choose between these two, essential versus luxury items? You will choose luxury items. Luxury items would have elastic demand. Why? When prices change, the demand will change more than the change in the price. The demand will be more responsive. It will respond more to a price change, and that's what we call elastic demand. The answer is going to be more than 1. And then the last one is infinite. So what's going to happen? The price doesn't change, but the demand would still change. I mean, think about a small player in a large market. Do you think a small player in a large market, there are so many sellers, a single player or a single buyer? Think about a single buyer in a large market. He will not be able to influence the price, because even if he buys more or even if he doesn't buy more, at the end of the day, the price is not going to change because he's a small player in a larger market. So in such cases, this guy can buy any quantity that he likes, but he has to accept the price in the market. I will explain this more in detail in the market structures. You're going to be a price taker. You will take the market price and buy the product. You can change your demand. It's up to you what you want to buy, how many units you want to buy, but you cannot influence on the price because you are a small player in a large market. So these are the 5 categories which we categorize them into these 2. I mean, if you want to understand what's happening here, perfectly elastic. What does that mean? Price doesn't change, but the demand changes. But when you say perfectly inelastic, what happens? The price does change, but the demand doesn't change. The demand is perfectly inelastic. Can you think of some examples for this? Perfectly inelastic. Perfectly elastic, I spoke to you now. A small buyer in a large market, the demand that he creates is perfectly elastic because he can buy any quantities, but he cannot influence the price because the market is too big. Even if he buys or doesn't buy, it doesn't really have an impact on the overall demand, so the price will not change. But perfectly inelastic, can you think about some examples? The price can change, but the demand doesn't change at all. There's no change in the demand for a given change in the price. The example that I gave you is insulin, but basic products, I agree with you on that answer, but I would probably put them under, inelastic category, in the sense the price of a product changes, but the quantity demanded will change a little bit. If you think about even the essentials, you would move between substitutes. If the price of one product goes up, you try to think of shifting to the substitutes. So basically, there will be some reduction in the demand for an increase in the price. But certain products, for example, the demand that doesn't change at all. Think about salt used in cooking. Think about salt used in cooking. Maybe when the price increases, the demand doesn't change at all. Although it is a theoretical explanation, but it is a very logical way of thinking that way. When the price changes, the demand doesn't change at all. So it is perfectly inelastic. So how are you deciding whether it is elastic or inelastic? You are deciding by the change in the demand. If the change in the demand is bigger, then it is elastic. If the change in the demand is smaller, then it is inelastic. Hope that makes sense. These diagrams are easy to understand. Why it is easy to understand? Look at the shape. This is a vertical line. It's a line which is horizontal to your vertical axis. And look what's happening. It's like this. The line is standing this way, and it's slowly moving and coming parallel, horizontal. It's parallel to the horizontal axis. So see what's happening. It's standing like this and slowly shifting and moving like this. So see exactly the shape. It's here like this, and the slope is becoming steeper and steeper. Here the slope is less steeper and medium steeper, more steeper now, meaning the demand changes more than the change in the price. And here it is perfectly elastic, easy to understand. And starting from price elasticity of 0, less than 1, equal to 1, more than 1, and infinite. All right, this is an interesting slide, very often tested. What are the factors that would influence price elasticity of demand? Right, let's start talking about the first one. The availability of substitutes. If you have more substitutes available for a particular product, what do you think the price elasticity of demand would be? Would it be elastic or inelastic? What do you think about it? Is it going to be elastic or inelastic? You have more substitutes available for a product. It is going to be elastic. That's exactly correct. Why it is elastic? Because when the price changes, price increases, you would be immediately be able to switch to other products because you have plenty of substitutes available. But if you do not have enough substitutes available, when the price increases, the quantity demanded does not decrease. This is what I said. Examples, basic products. Basic products, you will have to anyway buy them, so that demand doesn't drop much. So availability of substitutes would be a major factor influencing the price elasticity of demand. Higher the availability of substitute, higher the elasticity. Lower the availability of substitutes, lower the elasticity. Moving to the next point. Proportion of income spent on the item. What does that mean? Think about the example that I gave you is salt used in the cooking purposes. It's so cheap, isn't it? So maybe let's say it's $1, and then let's say your income is like, let's say $10,000. So that $1 on the $10,000 is a fraction. If that is increasing even to $2, it doesn't really change your living standard. So it doesn't really affect your purchasing power. So that's when we say if a particular product accounts for a smaller proportion of your income, then what do you think that product is going to be? Is that going to be elastic or inelastic? What do you think about it? Is that going to be elastic or inelastic? It's going to be inelastic because it doesn't matter. You don't even feel that it is changing, isn't it? When the price increases or price of salt increases, you don't really care because it doesn't really affect you because it's anyway very, very cheap. It accounts for a smaller fraction of your income. But you're talking about your rent, house rental increasing, meaning that probably accounts for a larger chunk of your income. Then you will start to look for an alternative shelter because changing that, increasing that would have an impact on your overall life standards, living standards, so that becomes elastic. That's exactly right. The third one, time elapsed since previous price change. What does that mean? If the price is increasing of a particular product in the short term, do you think people will be able to shift to the competitive products or substitute products faster, or not possible in the short term? What do you think about in the short term? In the short term, do you think people can change the demand as much as the change in the price? Yes or no? I'm talking about short term. Can people change their habits in the short term? Obviously, you can't. In the short term, you cannot change them because you cannot identify a substitute in the short run. It's very difficult. And you can't change your habits because you are so used to a particular type of product. It's very difficult for you to change from that to something else. But in the longer run, you try to change them because you know this product keeps going up in prices. Let's invent something else. Let's identify something else, discover something else, and switch to that. But so in the long term, what do you think products become? In the long term, products become more elastic because people can change the demand much higher than what they can do in the short run. So in the short run, demand is inelastic. In the long run, it is elastic. The great example that I could think of is the shale oil. You know about shale oil? The United States produces shale oil as a non-traditional way of producing oil as competition to the oil producing nations, OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So what happens when oil has been a great source of wealth? So what United States started thinking is to come up with an alternative way of producing them. So in the long run, things like this could happen. People can come up with different way of manufacturing, producing them. So the demand tends to become elastic in the long run. So these three things are very important for you to remember, the factors influencing elasticity of demand. Right, so now let's move on to elasticity of demand on a straight line demand curve. I mean, this demand curve, can we say is this a demand curve or a supply curve? Why do we say this is the demand curve? Can someone talk about it? Why do you think it is a demand curve? How does it look like? Is it downward sloping or upward sloping? Is it downward sloping or upward sloping? What do you think the shape of this demand curve? Slide 5, we're talking about elasticity of demand. Is it downward sloping? So this is a demand curve, and that's why we say it's a demand curve. There is a relationship between price and demand is negative. The beauty is that, in a straight line demand curve, you could plot all type of elasticities. Look at this. What's happening is you're here at the beginning, at the top of the graph, at the top of the straight line, your demand tends to be more elastic and it comes down to unitary elastic towards the right side of your straight line. It becomes low elasticity. We will understand this better when we talk about demand equation in the next couple of slides. So what is the learning point here is that this is the slope of your demand curve. The slope of the demand curve changes, the slope changes from left to right. It changes from high elasticity to low elasticity. That is what you need to understand from slide number 5. Okay, now there's a question. So let's talk about that question. What do you think about, tobacco? The demand for tobacco, is it elastic or inelastic? generally? What do you think about it? Demand for tobacco, is it elastic or inelastic? It is actually inelastic. For most of the time, we say for products, which are, addictive in nature, we normally talk about the demand is actually inelastic, because the change in the demand will be very less for a given change in the price, because people are addicted to it, habituated products. You cannot change the demand in the short run. So this is the okay. Look at this question. So this is a question that has come. My boss switched to another cigarette brand, and the price and the import duty imposed on the cigarette is smoked within days. This is like kind of a great example where what we are trying to say is, when you say tobacco or cigarettes as a whole, when the price increases, let's say, if, I mean, it depends on whether you are looking at these products as a whole or you're looking at as individual brands. So if you look at individual brands, and if imported brands go up in price due to import duties, the attention shifts to local brands. But overall, if you think about the government imposing a tax overall on the tobacco sector, then still the demand for the tobacco doesn't really come down much. That's why we say it is inelastic. But in this particular example, the two things that you're talking about become substitutes. So then what we are trying to say is that the overall industry is not impacted by the taxes, but one product is impacted, but the other one is not. Then what does that mean? You have more substitutes available. So when you have more substitutes available, it would become elastic. So it depends on what you are looking at. It depends on whether you are looking at a particular segment as a whole, or whether you're looking at different brands and each impacted by a different fact. Hope that makes sense. And moving back to slide 6. So this is a very important point. Now, this is very often tested in the exam, so I would like to ensure that you understand, for inelastic products and elastic products, we are going to talk about the relationship between price and total consumer expenditure, or you can say total revenue of the producers. It's the same thing. You've got to understand that when you're talking about the relationship between price and the total consumer expenditure and the total producer revenue, you understand why they are both the same. Because what is an expenditure for the consumer is a revenue for the supplier. So sometimes in the exam they change these words, so you should be able to understand. It's the same thing that they're talking about, whether they talk about consumer revenue, consumer expenditure, or the producer revenue. So we are going to actually talk about the relationship between price and total revenue. So let's talk about it. What is the relationship between these two? Instead of memorizing them, it's always better that we look at it in an example so we understand what happens. So let's take an example. Let's say your price is 10 and quantity demanded is 10,000. Now you need to tell me what is the total revenue. What do you think is going to be the total revenue? It's going to be $10 times 10,000 units. So how much that will become? 10,000 units. That's going to become how much? That's going to become $100,000. So that's what it's going to become. Now, let's say price increases to 12, quantity demanded decreases to 9,000. First of all, you got to tell me something. Is this elastic or inelastic? Before calculating the total revenue, you need to tell me, is this elastic or inelastic? The price increases by 20%, 10 to 12 is 20%, and the quantity demanded decreases from 10,000 to 9,000, so that's by 10%. That is inelastic because the changes in the demand is less than the changes in the price. It's inelastic. If you calculate this as an equation, percentage change in demand divided by percentage change in the price, it's going to be 10% divided by 20%, so that's going to be 0.5, which is inelastic because it's less than 1. So let's see what's happening to your total revenue. So what happens to total revenue? It's going to become 12 times 9,000. So how much that's going to be? How much is going to be your demand? How much is going to be your total revenue? 12 times 9,000 is going to be 108. What's happening to your consumer revenue or consumer expenditure or the producer revenue? When the price increases, total consumer expenditure increases. Why? Normally, when the price increases, you tend to think the total consumer expenditure decreases because people buy less. But you got to understand, although the price increased by 20%, did the demand drop by 20%? Yes or no? Did the demand drop by 20% for a 20% increase in the price? No, it did not. It only dropped by 10%. Because of that, your total consumer expenditure increased. So what does that mean? The conclusion is that if your product is inelastic, price elasticity of demand is less than 1, increase in the price will increase the total revenue of the product. But let's talk about elastic products. So what's going to happen? Let's say your price is 10 and quantity demanded is 10,000 and your total revenue is going to be 100,000 as we worked out earlier. So what's going to happen now? Your price drops to 12 and quantity demanded drops to 6,000. So what happens now? What is the change in price? What is the percentage change in the price? 10 to 12, which is what percentage is the change in price? Change in price is 20%. What is the change in the demand? 10,000 to 6,000, 40% change in the demand. So your answer is going to be, how much is your change in demand? So your answer will be change in demand divided by change in price. So 40% divided by 20%. So what is your answer? What is your price elasticity of demand? 2. Price elasticity of demand is 2. It is elastic because the change in the demand is more than the change in the price. So what happens to your total revenue now? 12,000 times 6,000. 72,000 is going to be. What's happening here? Increase in the price is decreasing the total revenue for the producers for elastic products, and for inelastic products, increase in the prices, increasing the total revenue. Why do you think this is going to be useful? Why do we think we study price elasticity of demand? This is going to be relevant for pricing decisions of companies. Now, if you are selling this product, I'm thinking from now firm's perspective. If you are selling this product, the first product, the inelastic one, do you think the company would increase the price of the product? Do you think the company would increase the price? They would increase the price. Why? Because when they increase the price, demand will not drop as much as the price, as much as the increase in price. So the total revenue would still go up. But if you are selling this product, if you are selling the second product, would you increase the price? Would you increase the price? No. Why? If you increase the price, what's going to happen to your total revenue? Your total revenue is going to drop. Why? Why is your total revenue is going to drop? Because the product is elastic. Change in the demand is going to be more than the change in the price. So this is the learning outcome statement which we are trying to focus here. If you go back and see, price elasticity of demand in elastic range, price increase will increase total revenue, percentage decrease in quantity demanded is less than the percentage increase in price. This is what we mathematically proved now. Elastic means price increase will decrease total revenue because the percentage change in demand is more than the percentage change in price. So it's very important. This relationship should be understood well. Okay, now calculating price elasticity of demand, I think it should make more sense to you now. Remember, I try to explain you this formula as well. There are two methods you can calculate them. The one is delta QD percentage divided by delta P. That is the first one, if the percentages are given. If not, what can you do? You can calculate price elasticity of demand using this formula. What is that? P naught divided by QD naught. What does that mean? This is your opening price. This is your opening quantity demanded before the change occurs. What is this? This is the slope coefficient. I'm going to explain you the demand curve. Demand curve is QD equals to A minus BP. We will explain that in the whiteboard in a short while, but before that, I want you to understand how to calculate price elasticity of demand. You've got delta Q divided by delta P, change in the demand divided by the change in the price, times opening price divided by quantity is also going to give you price elasticity of demand. So you should be able to understand how to calculate price elasticity of demand, and then we are going to explain the demand functions. So understanding the demand function is very important. So let's focus on this equation. We could actually try to do something here. First of all, let's try to understand. You have your price is 50, and this is your price. Price is 50, and then when the price is 50, demand is 20,000, and then when the price fell to $40, your demand dropped to 21,000. Okay, now can we calculate the price elasticity of demand? So how do we calculate your PED equals to your opening price? What's your opening price? The opening price, can you guys help me with this? If you understand this, I'm using not the percentage formula, but the other one. Opening price divided by quantity demanded. What is the quantity demanded? 20,000 times delta QD. What is your delta QD? What is the change in the demand? The change in the demand is, how much is the change in the demand? 1,000 divided by, what is the change in the price? 10. What's going to be the answer? What is going to be your answer? Your answer, I'm going to say your answer is going to be less than 1. Going to be less than 1. Why I'm saying it's less than 1? I could easily say that the increase in the demand for a decrease in the price is just 5%, but decrease in the price from 50 to 40 is actually 20%. So your price elasticity of demand is going to be less than 1. It's going to be inelastic. How much that's going to be? 50 divided by 20,000 times 1,000 divided by 10. It's going to be 0.25. Price elasticity of demand is inelastic. So this is one way to look at it. What is the other way to calculate this? By percentages. What is the percentage change? Percentage change in QD divided by percentage change in price. So how do you do it? QD percentage change is how much? It's here 20 to 21,000, 5% divided by 20%, isn't it? 5% divided by 20%. So how much that's going to be? That's going to be 0.25. Is that right? It's becoming the same answer, isn't it? So these are the two ways that you calculate price elasticity of demand. Now, you need to understand what is this. This is going to be very important. What is this? Let me write this formula once again. P equals to P divided by QD times change in QD divided by change in P. Okay, I'm actually talking about this one. Talking about this one. This is what, remember, is the slope of the demand curve. Right? Meaning, what is the meaning of slope? If you go back and think about the price elasticity of demand, the 5 type of curves that we were talking about. So for each type of elasticity, your curves were different. It was horizontal, which was vertical. It was parallel to the vertical axis when price elasticity of demand is 0. When it is inelastic, the slope was less steeper. When it was elastic, it was more steeper. When it was elastic, perfectly elastic, it was parallel to the horizontal axis, the demand axis. Right. So end of the day, what is that slope? That slope is nothing but the relationship between change in the demand and change in the price. So you need to understand slope means change in demand divided by the change in price, and that is what this particular thing is. Now I'm going to explain you something interesting. I'm going to explain you demand function. How does the demand function work? QD equals to A minus BP. BP means B times P. Right now, this is very important. You've got to understand all the remaining slides for the next couple of slides, primarily focusing on the demand function. So you've got to understand what is this demand function and how it works. Okay, let's talk about it. Here, what does A talks about? Remember, A is the intercept. It is the intercept in your demand curve. What does that mean? When the price is 0, what would be the demand? If you want to talk about them, okay, let me draw a curve. Let me draw a curve and say we are going to see what is A. This is your price and this is your demand. So now, what is the point here? What is the price here? Can you tell me what is the price here at the point where I'm pointing the cursor? What do you think is the price? The price is 0. What is the demand here? Let's say the demand here is 5,000. The demand here is 5,000. So this is what A. If you go back to the equation, I say quantity demand equals to A minus BP. Here, when you say A is when the price is 0. That is the intercept where your demand curve touches or intercepts your demand axis, your demand axis here. So that's what we say, your intercept A. What is B? B is the slope. What is the slope? How do we calculate slope? A is intercept. What is B? B is the slope. So can someone tell me how do we calculate slope? How do we calculate slope? We spoke about them. Slope is nothing but your change in the demand and change in the price. Always remember the change in the demand comes as a numerator and change in the price comes as a denominator, because we are trying to understand the change in demand for a change in the price. So that's why delta QD divided by delta P. So then it becomes, you have your, so basically B equals to, how do you calculate them, is change in QD divided by change in price. Always B is the slope. And then price, because price is the particular price. And now this is important to understand. When the price is zero, okay, let me explain a formula in a practical example. When the price is zero, let's say the demand is 10,000. So in this case, can you tell me what is A? Can you tell me what is A? When the price is zero, your demand is 10,000. So 10,000 is your A. Meaning that is the maximum demand in the society. Maybe you can say all the population in a country buys this product. What is the maximum demand? If the product is given free of charge, everybody will take it. So which is why we say the price is zero and the demand is $10,000. That is a maximum demand. So now you keep increasing the prices. What should happen to your demand? But you won't be selling this product at zero, but at what price you will be selling? You'll be selling above zero. When you keep increasing the price, what happens to your demand? What happens to your demand? When you keep increasing, the demand will reduce. By how much it will reduce? The next question is, if you understand the formula, you will be able to answer this question. If the price increases from zero to above, your demand drops. Demand drops by what? Your demand drops by the slope, which is the change in demand divided by the change in price. So now, I will also give you the slope. Slope is basically, let's say, the slope here is, let's say, 1,000 divided by 500. So the answer is 2. So your B is 2. Your B is 2. What does that mean? Percentage change in demand for a percentage change in price is 2, which means if the price increases by 1, the demand will decrease by 2. When the price decreases by 1, demand increases by 2. So that's what B is 2. So now I'm going to ask you a question. If the price is 10, identify the demand. If the price is 10, we are going to identify the demand. So that's what we are going to do. So now we are going to substitute all these figures in our demand equation. What is the demand equation? QD equals to A minus BP. So here we have QD. What is your A? Can you tell me what is your A? What is the A here? Again, one more time, 10,000. That's right. Minus, what is your B, which is the slope of the demand curve? What is that? Minus 2. So what's going to happen now? Minus 2 times P. How much is your price? What is your price now? 10. So 2 times 10 is 20. So what is going to be your demand? Quantity demanded at a price of 10. At a price of 10, your demand is 9980. This is what our conclusion is. Given that your slope is 2. The slope is 2 means, what does that mean? For every $1 increase in the price, what would happen to the demand? Demand would drop by 2. Demand would drop by 2, but here the price is increasing by 10. So the demand would drop by 20. So When it's given free of charge, the demand is 10,000. So when it is given at $10, it will drop by 20. So it will be 9,980. What about if the price is 500? What do you think when the price is increased to 500? So what do you think? 10,000 minus 2 times 500. So what do you think is going to be your demand now? Your quantity demanded at a price of 500 is going to be 9,000. It's going to be 9,000. Why? It's easy to explain. When the price increases by $1, demand reduces by 2. So if the price increases by $500 from 0, the demand will drop by $1,000. So 1,000 units. So the demand will be 10,000, will become 9,000 now. So at a price of 500, the demand will be 9. It's a simple formula which is used by organizations for pricing. Obviously, in practice, it gets more complicated as so many factors influencing the demand. It's not just the price influencing the demand. In this formula, we assume the only factor that influences the demand is the price. Hope you understand. So I'm going to go back to the equation here. Once again, so you know about it. So let's look at this question. How the demand function for gasoline is given below, which is in here. You should be able to answer my questions now. That's why I was able to. I was trying to use the whiteboard here. You should be able to tell me what is your A now. What is your A in this formula? What is your A? Your A is 138,500. What does that mean? What does that mean practically? This is the maximum demand in a country or for a given product. Why? What is this? This is the intercept. What is intercept? Intercept means when the price is 0, what is your demand? Is 138,500. What is 12,500, guys? Can you tell me? What is 12,500? In this case, what is 12,500? Everyone is quiet. Why? Okay, that is a slope. That is a slope. And what is the formula for the slope? How do you identify the slope? What is the formula? Can we identify the formula for the slope? How do we calculate the slope? Change in demand divided by the change in price. Fantastic. That is the slope. That is 12,500. So what does that mean? If the price increases by $1, your quantity demanded will drop by 12,500 units. So we are talking about the demand for gas for a given gas prices. So the question is calculate the price elasticity of demand at a gasoline price of 3 per gallon. Price is 3. So first of all, what we need to do, we are going to use 3 as a price, and that's going to be your P0, and we are going to calculate the demand. So what are you going to do? If your Q, it's going to be 3. So what does that mean? So basically, if you substitute $3 here, what do you think is going to be your demand? What do you think is going to be your demand at a price of $3? At a price of $3, what is your demand? Can we calculate the demand? Yeah. 101,000. That's exactly right. So your demand is 101,000. How do we calculate it? 12,500 times 3. That minus 138,500 minus that gives you 101,000. And so what is your delta P divided by delta Q? That's a slope coefficient. Is 12,500, which is minus because of the negative relationship between price and demand. So then you look at we are going to calculate the price elasticity of demand. What is the formula for price elasticity of demand? Price divided by QD times slope. Delta Q divided by delta P. So opening price is 3. Opening demand is 101,000 times the slope delta Q divided by delta P. The extended formula to calculate PED gives you minus 0.37. We know minus. Is it elastic or inelastic? Can you tell me? Is this product elastic or inelastic? Yes, that's exactly right. Slope is nothing but delta QD divided by delta P. That's what your slope is. That is what B is. Okay, I think this is a mistake here. It has to be fixed. It's delta Q divided by delta P, guys. It's not delta P divided by delta Q. It should be the other way around. It's the change in the demand for a change in the price. It should be delta Q divided by delta P. Let me fix that right away. There you go. Q divided by delta. There you go. Here you go. Right, so what happens here is that 0.37, so it is inelastic, it's less than 1. Okay, right, now we are going into a new topic. We are done with price elasticity of demand. Is explained what is price elasticity of demand. In summary, the change in the price and the change in the demand. The degree of the change in demand for a given change in the price. If the demand is changing higher than the price, it's elastic. If it's changing less than the price, it's inelastic. We spoke about different relationship between price and the total consumer expenditure. We also spoke about factors influencing price elasticity of demand and the calculation. We also introduced demand function QD equals to A minus BP. Now we are moving down to cross elasticity of demand. Remember we said there are 3 types of elasticity of demand: price elasticity of demand, income elasticity of demand, and the third one is cross elasticity of demand. So what are we going to do here is that we are going to compare 2 things. In price elasticity of demand for the own product, we compare price of a particular product and the change in the price and how that would have an impact on the demand for the same product. But in a cross elasticity of demand, we're going to take the change in the price of one product and how that is going to have an impact on the change in the demand of another product. Let's take this example. Price of coffee increased by 16.65% and the demand for tea increased 11.1%. So what type of products are they? Are they substitute products or are they complementary products, guys? Can you tell me what they are? Substitute products. They are substitute products. You're exactly right. So for substitute products, what happens when the price of coffee increases? What happens to the demand for tea? What happens to demand for tea? Increases. So remember, in cross elasticity of demand, the signs become extremely important. But we said in price elasticity of demand, the signs are not important. Why did we say that? Why did we say the signs are not important in price elasticity of demand? We said you can ignore it. You can say less than 1, more than 1, equal to 1, infinite or 0. We don't really worry about the sign because it's always negative. There is a negative relationship between price and demand, unless we are talking about exceptional demand, Giffen and Veblen, and which we don't calculate price elasticity of demand. So we don't really worry about the sign. But when you talk about cross elasticity of demand, the signs are very important. So in this particular case, I don't really worry about the ultimate answer, whether it is less than 1 or more than 1. What I'm worried about is whether it is positive or negative. Here, both are positive. The price of coffee increasing, 16.65. Price of demand increasing for tea, 11.1. So the price elasticity of demand is 0.67. It's positive. So remember, for substitute products, the cross elasticity of demand is always positive. What does that positive mean? There is a positive relationship between price of a substitute product and price of a particular product. Here, price of coffee and price of tea. So we are actually talking about cross price elasticity of demand of tea. 11.1 divided by 16.65. So always remember the change in the demand will be the denominator and the change in the price is the numerator. This is the best way to remember slope. That's what I said for slope. Change in the demand divided by change in the price is your slope. That is the mean. Okay, coming back to this, it's 0.67. It is positive. So what is your conclusion? These two products are substitute products. Now I'm going to talk about the next one. Look at this. Price of pizza increased by 25% and the demand for cola decreased by 10.7. What does that mean? You know, the quantity demand percentage of change in quantity demanded is negative minus 10.7. The signs become important. Divided by increase in the price of pizza 25, your answer is minus 0.43. What does that mean? There is a negative relationship between price of pizza and the quantity demanded for cola because why? Why do we say that there is a negative relationship? What type of products are they? What type of products pizza and cola are? Are they substitute products? No. They are complementary products. They are complementary products, and that's why the price elasticity of demand is negative. So if your cross elasticity of demand is negative, we say that the products that we are talking about are complementary products. So for substitute products, cross elasticity of demand is positive. For complementary products, price elasticity of demand is negative. Now I'm going to ask you the third question. Cross price elasticity of demand for two products is zero. What do you mean they are? What do you think those two products are? The price of one product increases, the demand for another product doesn't change at all. Price increases from 10 to 15, 50%, but the demand for another product doesn't change at all. What do you think are these two products? They are what type of products? They are unrelated products. Think about unrelated products like, think about, price of pizza and the price of, let's say, oil, the fuel, petrol or whatever you call it, petrol. What do you think? They are unrelated products. So they don't have an influence on each other. So the demand doesn't change for a given price change of unrelated products. Your cross elasticity of demand is zero. Here, the ultimate values, whether it is elastic or inelastic, doesn't matter. But what matters? The signs matter. Okay, now I have a question for you before we move on to the next slide where we're going to talk about income elasticity of demand. The question for you is that at this point in time, what do you think is the difference between price elasticity of demand for own product and cross price elasticity of demand? What is the difference? The percentages, the formulas, do they change? They don't change. I don't think they change. Percentage change in demand divided by percentage change in price. Same thing. You have another formula. What is that formula? Price divided by QD times change in demand divided by change in price. So, but what is the difference between these formulas? The formula is just the same, but the only difference is in the price elasticity of demand, the change in the price and the change in the demand is pertaining to just one product. But in this cross elasticity of demand, we are relating two products. The change in the price is for a different product, and change in the demand is for a different product. So that's where the formulas differ, but if not, it's just the same formulas that we are talking about. So what are the three types of cross elasticity of demand? Positive, negative, zero. Positive means what type of products are they? What type of products are they? Positive cross elasticity of demand. Substitutes. Negative cross elasticity of demand. What type of products are they? Complementary product. Zero cross elasticity of demand. What type of products are they? They are unrelated products. That's precisely right. The signs do matter here because sometimes the relationship is positive and sometimes the relationship is negative. The last topic for us on elasticity of demand is income elasticity of demand. So what are we going to see here? Here we are going to say the price of the product doesn't change, even the price of other products do not change. But what's going to change is the income is going to change. When the income is going to change and the demand is going to change, we are going to assess the relationship between change in the demand for a given change in the income. Normally, what do you think is a relationship between income and demand? What do you think about it? Is it positive relationship or negative relationship? What do you think is a relationship between income and demand? Positive relationship or negative relationship? Are you guys there? Income of an individual and the demand for a product. Normally, for normal products, what do you think is the relationship between income and demand? Is it positive or negative? The relationship is positive. Why? When the income increases, the demand increases. Why the demand increases? Because increase in the purchasing power. So when the income increases, the purchasing power increases, the demand increases. Right? So, but what do you think about inferior products? We are not specifically talking about Giffen, because Giffen is an example we always use for price and demand relationship. Here we are talking about income and demand. So we specifically talk about inferior goods. We are not specifically talking about Giffen, because Giffen is just a specific name of an economist which he analyzed the behavior of certain people. When the price increase, they purchase more. When the price decrease, they purchase less. And they argue there is exceptional demand exists in the real world. But we understand Giffen is an inferior product, but not that all inferior products are Giffen. Right? There are so many other inferior products out there in the market. So when you say inferior products, right, what happens? They are substandard products consumed by people below the poverty line in a particular society. So what happens when the income increases? What do you think will happen to demand for inferior goods? Is the demand for inferior goods going to go down or is it going to go up? What do you think about it? Is the demand going to go down? It's going to go down. Why do you think the demand for inferior goods is going to go down when the income increases? Why do you think the demand goes down when the income increases for inferior goods? Why is that? Because consumers will have better purchasing power to buy good quality products or normal products. They will opt for better quality ones. And that's why we say for inferior goods, the relationship is negative. So your income elasticity of demand will be negative. But for normal goods, your income elasticity of demand will be positive. Do you agree with me? How do you now calculate the income elasticity of demand? I mean, you don't have to worry about it, as I told you before. Now you should be able to answer me. What do you think how do you think you will calculate the income elasticity of demand? Change in percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in income. In a price elasticity of demand, what is your numerator? What is your numerator for income elasticity of demand? For the price elasticity of demand, for the price elasticity of demand, what is your denominator? What is your denominator? Your denominator is denominator for price elasticity of demand. I'm talking about price elasticity of demand. What is your formula? Percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Here, we are using the same formula, but we are replacing price with income, because this is income elasticity of demand. We are understanding the sensitivity of demand for a given change in income. Right. I can tell you more. I can, tell you that for normal goods, income elasticity of demand is positive, but inferior goods is negative. But I can tell you, if you want, I can divide this normal goods elasticity is positive into elastic and inelastic. It can be positive, elastic, positive, inelastic. For which type of product you think the increase in the income will not increase the demand so much? Income increases, but the increase in the demand will be lower than that. That is for essential goods. If the income increases, would you buy more and more groceries? Yes or no? If you talk about groceries, will you buy more? If your income increases, will you buy more and more groceries? No. When the income increases, the demand increases, but it will increase less than the increase in the income. So what do you think your income elasticity of demand will be? Positive, but will be less than 1 or more than 1? What do you think about it? Is it going to be less than 1 or more than 1 when you talk about normal goods? We know it's positive, but it's going to be less than 1. But think about luxury items. When the income increases, what do you think will happen to the demand? Demand will increase more than the increase in the income. So which means your income elasticity of demand will be positive, but more than 1. So I'm actually helping you a little bit more here. On the normal goods, they are only saying it's positive, but I'm telling you within the positive, for essentials, it can be less than 1, and for luxury goods, it can be more than 1. And inferior goods, do we really mind whether it is less than 1 or more than 1? What are you really concerned about? For inferior good, what it is going to be? What is your income elasticity of demand is going to be negative, because there is a negative relationship between income and demand, because consumers will have better purchasing power to buy good quality products. That's income elasticity of demand. So we spoke about price elasticity of demand, cross elasticity of demand, and income elasticity of demand. 3 types of elasticity of demand. Now it's getting more interesting and more fun. It's all about numbers now, starting from slide 12. What I'm going to do now, before we finish off in the next 15 minutes, we are going to work up all the way up to slide 15. It should be much simpler now, because you understand the demand function. Can somebody write it for me, the demand function? How do you look at it? The basic demand function, only price and demand. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about anything else. Right? It is going to be A minus BP. What does that mean? A minus BP it should be, right? So what does that mean? A is the intercept, B is the slope, and price is the price. So this formula assumes that price is the only determinant of demand, which means that now if you take this example, QD for gas. So what are we calculating? We are trying to calculate the demand for gas. So when you're calculating the demand for gas, what is this 15? Can you guys tell me what is this 15? What is this 15? Although this is an expanded formula, I'm trying to explain that to you. It is an intercept. Can you explain a little bit more? What is the price at which the demand is 15? What do you think is the price here? Is 0. Your demand is 15, so that is your maximum demand. Would you agree? Yes. But what is this 3? What do you think is this 3? Is this 3? What is that? It's a slope. It's called B, isn't it? What is the formula? How do you understand that? How do you calculate it in practice? 3. Slope equals to B equals to what? Is that How do you calculate it? Delta D divided by delta P. That's exactly right. Fantastic. You guys are doing fantastic here. And price is price of the gas. Now, look at this. Are there other factors affecting the demand of gas other than the price? Yes or no? Are there other factors affecting the demand of gas other than the price? Yes. Remember in the previous slides, in the introductory slides, we said there are so many factors will have an impact on the demand, like income, like consumer preferences, price of substitute products, complementary products, etc., etc., would have an impact. So now we are modeling in more factors into your demand function. That is precisely what we are doing here. Look at this, what's happening here. 0.02 I. Income is not given. Here the price is not given. We can substitute income. Right, so income is not given. 0.02. What is that 0.02? You should be able to tell me if you are following the logic of whatever we are saying. You should be able to tell me what is 0.02 I. We are bringing income as a factor. We are saying plus. We are saying plus because there is a positive relationship between income and demand. That's why we are saying plus 0.02 I. What does that mean? So what does this 0.02 means? How is that calculated? Change in demand divided by what? This is change in demand divided by change in price. What is this 0.02? Change in demand divided by change in income. So this is again the slope, but the slope is focusing on the income, not on the price. Okay, now look at this. This is getting more interesting now. So what is this? This is the bus travel. Is the bus travel? What do you think? Is it a bus travel? Is it a substitute product for your own gasoline? Is it a substitute product or a complementary product? Bus travel. What do you think? What do you think it is? It's a substitute product. Owning your own car or using a public transport. So bus travel. Why do we say it's plus here? Why do we say it's plus here? Substitute products. What is the relationship between a price and the demand? Positive relationship. Why here it's plus? Income and demand, positive relationship. Why do you think it's negative here? Price and demand of the same product, negative relationship. So what does this tell you? This is the change in the demand of gasoline divided by change in the price of what? Change in the price of gasoline divided by the change in price of what? Bus travel. There you go. What is this 3? Can you focus here when I'm showing you the cursor? What is this 3? Change in the demand of gas divided by the change in the price of what? The first one I'm talking about. Change in the price of gas. So there you go. I mean, this is awesome. And moving on to the last one. What is it? 0.008p. So we are talking about auto, the car price and the fuel price, gasoline price. Are they substitutes or are they complementary products? What are they? They are complementary products. So when you say that they are complementary products, the relationship between price and the demand is negative. That's when we say it's negative. So what is the 0.008p? 0.08 is your slope, which is change in the quantity demanded divided by change in the quantity demanded of gasoline divided by change in the price of what? Change in the price of the car. Fantastic. So that's what this formula is. So if you should understand this because this can very well be tested in an exam. So now we are going to look at this question. Using the demand function given about and assuming an average automobile price of 22,000, income is 40,000, price of the bus travel is 25, price of a gasoline is 3, calculate and interpret the following. The first question for you is income elasticity of gasoline. That's what we are going to calculate. So what are we going to do? We are going to just apply everything other than the income. Income, we are going to keep it blank at the moment. 15. The price of gasoline is 3. The rest of the factors are the slopes, which is given in the equation here. So what I'm going to do is 3 is your price, and this I'm going to leave it for the moment because we are calculating income elasticity of demand. And this is what? 0.11 times 25. What is this 25? 25 is the price of bus travel, 25. And here, what is 22? 22 is the price of a car. 22 is the price of a car. So basically 8.6 plus 0.02 income. And then you're going to apply that at an income level of 40,000. So if you multiply 0.02 times 40,000 plus 8.6, which is derived by solving the formula 8.6 plus 0.02 times 40, which is your income, which gives you 9.4. So your demand for gasoline is 9.4 at an income level of 40,000. Now we are going to calculate elasticity of demand, income elasticity of demand. What is your opening income? What is the formula for income elasticity of demand? Let me go back. Income elasticity of demand. I'm going to ask you, would you agree with me if I say the income elasticity of demand is going to be income elasticity of demand equals to delta y divided by, y is the income, by the way, y divided by quantity demanded times delta QD, change in QD, divided by change in income. Would you agree with me on this formula? Is this right? Fantastic. Is there anything tricky here? No. It's just that we are replacing price with income, moving from price elasticity of demand to income elasticity of demand. So let's get back to the slides now. So what's happening here? 40 divided by 9.4. What is 40? Is your income, isn't it? 40 is your income, right? How much is your income? Your income is 40 divided by 9.4. What is your 9.4? 9.4 is your demand. Demand when the income is how much? Demand when the income is $40,000. So times 0.02. What is the 0.02? Can you tell me what is this 0.02? The formula for that, I know it is there here, 0.02. How do you calculate it? Because I want to make sure that you understand that. What is the 0.02? How do you calculate them? Change in the demand divided by the change in the income. Fantastic. That is what it is. So you are right. 0.02 times 40, 9.4. So that is the 0.02 we are using here. This is the demand, how we calculated the demand at 40,000 income. 8.6 plus 0.02 times 40 gives you 9.4. 40 divided by 9.4, opening income and opening demand at 40,000 income, times 0.02, which is the slope of the income function, 0.085. What does that mean? Income elasticity of demand. Is it positive or negative? Is it positive or negative? Is it positive or negative? Positive. Is it a normal good or an inferior good? Is it a normal good or an inferior good? Normal good. But normal essential or normal luxury? What do you think? Is it normal essential? Normal essential. That is why it is less than 1. Remember I said I can help you to splitting your normal elasticity of demand, income elasticity of demand into 2. Essential less than 1 and luxury more than 1. So that's what I was talking about. The second question is cross price elasticity of gasoline with respect to price of bus travel. So now this is what it is. We are actually going to talk about using the same function. We are now going to talk about the cross price elasticity of demand of bus travel. The demand for gasoline in relationship with the bus travel. So what are we going to do here? See what's happening. We are going to keep everything. We are going to solve this by, we are going to use everything as it is, as given in the question, but we are not going to change this particular thing. What is this 0.11? This is the change in the demand of gasoline divided by the change in the price of bus travel. That is 0.11. And then you have the price of bus travel, that is given 25. So we are going to use the price of the bus travel in this formula to substitute the price. So that's going to give you 9.35. So when the bus travel is $25, the demand for gasoline is 9.35. Now I'm going to use the cross elasticity of demand formula. What is the formula for cross elasticity of demand, guys? How do you calculate the price elasticity of demand for, how do you calculate the price elasticity of demand for cross elasticity of demand? Cross price elasticity of demand. Can someone tell me? How do you calculate in this context, what we are talking about now? How do we calculate it? First one is going to be price of what? We are going to talk about price of gasoline, sorry, price of bus travel divided by demand for what? Demand for gasoline times, what are you going to say? Times, you are exactly right. Change in demand for what? Change in demand of gasoline divided by change in price of what? Price of bus travel. Is that right? Do you guys agree with my formula? Let me expand it. Does it make sense? Price of bus travel divided by demand for gasoline times change in demand for gasoline divided by change in price of bus travel. This is going to give you the cross elasticity of demand. So let's go back. These numbers are already given to you. 25 is your price of the bus travel divided by the demand for gasoline, 9.35 times 0.11, which is the slope coefficient for change in the price of one product over the change in the demand of another. Change in the price, so Q delta QD divided by delta P, but we are talking about different products. So your answer is 0.294. What is your conclusion? What is your conclusion? There is a cross elasticity of demand is positive or negative? What do you think about it? Is the cross elasticity of demand positive or negative? It is positive. What are the products that we are talking about? Are we talking about supplementary, complementary products, or are we talking about substitutes? What are you talking about? These two products, gasoline and bus travel, are substitutes. For substitutes, what is the relationship, guys? Positive relationship or negative relationship? Positive relationship between price of one product and demand for another product. So that's why it is 0.294. Are you really worried about whether it is less than 1 or more than 1? What are you really concerned about? Whether your answer is positive or negative. The signs are becoming very important for cross elasticity of demand and income elasticity of demand. But when it comes to price elasticity of demand, what matters is the absolute number, whether it is less than 1 or more than 1, etc. So that's about the end of price elasticity of demand. So that's the end of today's session. So what we're going to do tomorrow is that we're going to just finish off the couple of slides left on the demand supply, and major focus for us is to try and wrap up the market structures tomorrow, which is going to be a critical topic where we are going to talk about different market structures, perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, and things like that. That's the last reading in microeconomics before we get into macroeconomics. Okay, guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining.